Welcome to this short Adobe Flash series where we're going to be looking at a lot of the coding and ActionScript involved with making these Flash animations run. So I'm going to try and make these quick, and as we go through, we'll talk about all the coding structures, and I'll kind of explain what we're looking at as we go through these a little bit more in detail. So what we want to do is open up the student data files, which you don't have them. They'll be attached in the video or on Google Classroom for my students. And you want to go ahead and open up Chapter 9, and we'll start with 9-1. And just so we're not overwriting this base project file, go ahead and resave it in your project folder. So for now, I'm just going to create a temporary folder on my desktop. And I'm going to resave it as circle object. Okay, so once that's saved, what I'm going to do is change my window to, or magnification to fit to window, and then bring up my timeline a little bit. All right, right now we just have one layer called border, and it just puts a blue box around everything. That's what we're going to start with here. All right, so let's create a new layer. That's the button down on the bottom left. And I'm going to go ahead and call it Actions. And go ahead and select frame 1. And if you have your Actions panel handy, go ahead and open that up. I do not, so I'm going to go up to Window in the menu bar and down to Actions. F9 is your keyboard shortcut. Okay, I'm going to plop mine down here in my timeline. That's where I like to put it. So on my video here, I'll kind of zoom in on the code and back and forth between the stage and the Actions panel so you guys can see what I'm typing in. All right, before we dive into the code though, I want to explain a few things just about basic coding and programming with ActionScript. So I pulled this from the online textbook, and I'm going to refer to this diagram right here. There's 4 vocabulary words I want to talk about. First one is a class. You can refer to a class as just a holistic general group of objects. So for example, the book refers to cell phones. So all the cell phones in the world would be a class. Well, I'm going to give you another example, like cars. Okay, a lot of different people have many variety of cars. And all cars have the same things like gas pedals, steering wheels, windows, whatever. Okay, a whole bunch of stuff. When you start talking about specific instances of a class, so of a cell phone, you're getting into objects. So you can refer to your own cell phone. For example, I have a Droid Turbo 2. That would be an instance of the entire class of cell phones. I also have a car. I have a Ford Fusion, which is an instance of the entire class of car. When you start talking about properties of objects, that gets a little bit more detailed. You have to pick the specific object and then talk about a specific property. So you can talk about its height, width, color, weight, so on and so forth here. Okay, so for a car, you can talk about the properties of how fast it can go, its RPMs, how many gears it has, so on and so forth. When you talk about methods, you want to answer a question like, what can it do? Okay, so a method is also referred to as a function, where you're basically giving it some programming to actually do something. For a cell phone example, like make a call, receive a call, make a text message, so on and so forth. So for a car, you could say turn on, shift gears, accelerate, decelerate, turn. Okay, these would be different functions that a car or a specific car would have. Okay, maybe different instances of cars do different things. Some cars can go forward, but not backwards, so on and so forth. All right, so I'm going to refer to these words as we go through here because you're going to see those as we code. All right, now that those unnecessary evils are out of the way, let's go back into our Actions panel and let's start creating some stuff. So we're not going to mess with the stage a whole lot. We will eventually, but for now, everything's going to go into code, and we're going to create and manipulate objects through code. So the first thing we're going to do is create a variable. And for now, we're just going to call it my circle, and it's going to be of type shape. We're going to create a new shape. So you may have seen as soon as I got done typing this in, we got an import statement at the top. So an import statement just allows us to use different classes for the rest of our code. So there are keywords here like variable, new, and import, which turn blue, but we also have classes that also turn blue. So for example, shape is a class. You see it twice there. Flash is a class, and then you see a period after it. Display is a subclass of any Flash object, and then a shape is a subclass of anything that is displayed on the stage. So all of those are classes and then a few keywords in there. So those will turn blue. If that import statement didn't show up for you, just go ahead and get it typed in. All right, on the next line, we're going to continue with our instance of our object, and we're going to grab the graphics class and then tell it to begin a fill color. All right, so I'll get this typed in and then we'll talk about it. So there are a few different ways to name a color. You either have the name, you have the hexadecimal color, or you have the red, green, and blue, also known as RGB value, which we're going to work with the hexadecimal. So this is an ActionScript prefix for any hexadecimal color that you type in. So 0x is always what starts that. And then after that, you're going to see 6 digits, which are either numbers or letters A through F. If you open up your color panel, any color you pick, you'll see a little number down here. If you hover over it, it says hex. So it's always notified by a pound sign, but then you see 6 numbers or letters in here. That's the code for each color. If you change the color in the box, this code changes as well. So every specific color, or different shade of a color, has its own code. This color right here, to see what it's going to look like, you just type it in the box. So 2 zeros, 2 Fs, 2 zeros. Capitalization doesn't matter. If I hit enter, automatically goes to that color. It's a bright green. All right, so this sets the color of the fill. All right, we'll continue with that same object. Notice I'm using the variable name. We're going to grab the graphics class again, and we're going to tell it to actually draw a circle. Now this method takes 3 parameters, and as I pause here, you can see them pop up on the screen in the little tooltip. So we need 3 numbers. The first one is the X position, the second one is the Y position, and the last one is the radius. So I'm going to do 250, 120. Almost every line of code is going to end with a semicolon saying that that's the end of the statement and you're ready to start the next one on the next line. So the last thing we need to do, which will take some explaining, is to add the child. Okay, so what this does is add this object to what's called the display list. So the Flash project display list. The display list, kind of self-intuitive, is a list of all the objects that need to show up on the stage. By default, objects aren't automatically added to that list. So we have to add them manually. So that's what this is for. The stage is automatically selected before we choose this class. So this add child method is actually part of the Flash project or the stage itself. All right, so that should be enough. Again, if you have to type in the import statement, go ahead and do that if it didn't put it in automatically. Notice there's nothing really to play in the editor here. If I click play, nothing happens. That's because this all happens at runtime. So we actually need to test it in Flash Player. So we'll go ahead and do that. Bam, there's your green circle. You can change some properties about this circle if you want to. Back in your actions panel, if you want to change it to a red color, that's 2 Fs and 4 zeros. If you want to go to your color panel and pick a color and then take the code, copy and paste it in here, that's a quick way to do it. You can go ahead and change the position, change how large it is, okay, so on and so forth. If I test it again in Flash Player, you'll see the changes. Just for reference, the position 0, 0 is in the top left. As you increase the X, it goes to the right. As you increase the Y, it goes down. Let's go ahead and create another shape. So the easiest way to do that is just to copy those lines and paste it down below. Okay, now this, if I test this, it's going to throw an error, and that's because I'm using the variable name twice. Notice nothing shows up. It says we have a conflict that exists with the definition myCircle. Now this is kind of confusing, namespace internal. That's just the computer's way of saying, hey, you have duplicate variables, myCircle and myCircle. They have to have different names. So I'm just going to be generic here, just put a 2 after it. These are different. Okay, go ahead and change the color of this circle. I'm going to go ahead and change it to an orange color. And I'll go ahead and decrease the size a little bit, and I'll increase the radius. Okay, so now down here in the add child, and these two statements right here where it's grabbing the graphics class, we need to tell it the correct variable. Since we changed this variable here, it's got to have the same variable names here. All right, if I save that and test it, there you go. Tested it on a device, so this is what it would look like on a cell phone. All right, last thing we'll do, have a little bit of fun here. We're going to create a tween with this last object we made. So we're going to create a variable that's going to move the circle. It's going to be of type tween, and we'll create a new tween. And again, a tween is a method, so we're going to do something with this object, and notice the different arguments that we need to type in, also called parameters. So the first parameter is which object we're going to use. I suppose you could use the first circle, but I'll stick with the second one. The next one is a string, which is a line of text, and this is either an X or a Y. It's going to tell whether to tween it along the X axis or the Y axis. So we'll do the Y axis. The next parameter is if there's any type of easing to be done, we'll just say none. The next two are the start and ending position of the tween. So it's going to start at a Y value of 0 and end at a Y value of 250. And the last two values go together. So this value represents either the time in seconds or the number of frames that has passed. The Boolean value, which is either true or false, at the end is what tells whether it's time or frames, time in seconds or frames. If it's true, then this is going to be time. The way I remember that, T is true, T is time, so T and T. The frames would be if you put a false value here, so F and F. That's the way I remember it anyways. All right, if you save that and test it, looks like we get an error here. Unknown property, none, undefined property. Oh, okay, my bad. We needed an import statement to be able to use the eases class here. Okay, so right underneath here, we'll add another import statement. Again, all import statements should begin at the top. And we'll just add the easing class, and then we'll add all the subclasses under easing. So that's what this little asterisk means. Shift F, I'm sorry, not Shift F, Shift asterisk on the keyboard. That adds all subclasses of the easing class. All right, that should take care of that, allowing us to use that none value there. All right, there you go. There's your tween. Okay, so top to bottom, that lasted 5 seconds. Let's make that a little, I'm going to change it from 5 to 2, and it's still true, so that's going to be 2 seconds. There you go, a little bit quicker. All right, so I'll stop it there for this tutorial, and for the next one, we'll go ahead and look at some interactivity.